Unfortunately, we don't have it all together. You don't and I don't. And sometimes that makes conflict resolution all the more complicated. And I think that's one reason why Jesus spoke the words he did at the beginning of Matthew chapter 7. Jesus said, "How can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? First, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." You see, when it comes to a conflict situation, when it comes to a difficulty, when we're having issues, we have to first examine ourselves before we can properly confront or speak to the other person that's involved. We've got to start somewhere, and it's got to start with us. We've got to start examining ourselves. As Jesus said so graphically, we've got to get the log out of our own eye before we can get the little speck out of the other person's eye. Now, this doesn't mean that we shouldn't ever confront someone. It doesn't mean that we should just ignore every problem we have with someone or try to brush aside every single conflict. There are appropriate times for conflict resolution. There are times to be proactive about it. We've got examples of those in Scripture. For example, Paul had to confront Peter about an issue. Yes, the great Paul had to confront the great Peter because Paul saw what Peter was doing and said, "Peter, you're not acting the same around everybody. Around some people you act one way, and around these other people you act a different way, and that's just not right. We need to get that worked out." So Paul confronted Peter about this, and Peter was the better as a result of it. So that was a good thing to do. Then there was the prophet Nathan confronting King David. King David had done something really badly and had really sinned egregiously. And Nathan was supposed to talk to David about it. And that was really, could have been really awkward because Nathan's the prophet of God. And really the king wants him to speak words of encouragement to him. But Nathan followed through and confronted David about his wrongdoing. And David repented. And out of that confrontation, good things happened. So confrontation can be an important tool in conflict resolution. But Jesus cautions us, before we take that step, we've got to do some business with ourselves first. That's why he said, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you'll see clearly enough to remove the speck from your brother's eye. It's got to start with us. We've got to take those first steps. I think the passage is warning us from correcting someone too quickly. And it's warning us from aiming that correction in the wrong direction. You know, if I've got a speck in my eye, I don't need you to chop off my hand. Right? I need the right kind of correction to get that speck out of my eye. And believe me, if you've got a big log shooting out of your eye, I don't want you coming anywhere close to touching my eye. Right? We've got to look at ourselves first. Get rid of the log in our own eyes so we can properly help remove the speck from someone else's eyes. So before we talk to anyone about their faults, we've got to own up to our own issues. We've got to own up to our own problems. We've got to own up to our part of the conflict. Once we do that, then we're going to be better equipped to take that very practical step of going to the other person. Two quick things that we need to watch out for. One is we need to watch out for, on our own part, an overly sensitive attitude. Sometimes we can just be extremely sensitive about something, and that can make a conflict or a difficulty seem much worse than it really is. And the second thing, and this is the one that Jesus is really emphasizing, is we've got to watch out for our own sinful behavior. Sometimes something happens around us, and our initial response is not a godly response. Our initial response is a bad response, a regrettable response. And then we exacerbate a problem as a result of that. So we've got to watch out for, on the one hand, being overly sensitive about something, and on the other hand, our improper responses that may inflame a situation. If we can do that, and if we can examine ourselves first, then we can heed the warning of Jesus here to get that log out of our own eye before the speck of dust out of the other person's. Go in peace.